Grimshire is a dark and cozy life simulation game created by the indie game developer team Acute Studio. In it, you play as an animal working to help the community you live in. Much like similar games in the genre, you are gifted an abandoned farmhouse which you get to fix up and decorate. You can grow crops and cook recipes, fish, mine, plant fruit and nut trees, forage around the world, donate items to the town's museum, and tame and raise livestock as well. What's different about this game is how much weight there is behind everything you do. Grimshire is not just about filling your pockets with gold or helping an already decently well-off community. The stakes are high and the village you've been welcomed into is in danger. There's looming turmoil, lives are in your hands, and your choices will literally decide who makes it through the seasons. It's one of the only farming life simulation games with survival-style elements, where your actions have real consequences, and there is a big sense of importance you feel as the player in this game, since it's your responsibility as the only farmer in the village to make sure the food you grow and collect can last everyone through the hard times. As of right now, Grimshire is playable on Steam and Steam Deck, and it's planned to come to Nintendo Switch in the future too. The art in the game is dark and slightly desaturated, with a simple pixel style and shading that gives it an indie feel, while the music is calm and the sound effects are light and unintrusive. And while the art style may look a bit too indie-styled for some, many players do find that after they've been playing the game for a while, the art does begin to grow on them, claiming that it fits the game's overall vibe well and is rather immersive. Currently, Grimshire is a single-player only game. However, the developers have said that it's single-player only because they're a small team and they don't have the ability to add multiplayer at the moment. They have said that they would love to add multiplayer to the game in the far future though, if it is feasible, but will plan to continue focusing on the single-player content for now. When you start a new game in Grimshire, you'll be welcomed into a character customization menu, which allows you to play as several different animal species, each with their own food needs and unique perk. There are 3 different types of animal species in the game: herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Herbivores will get more stamina from plant-based meals, carnivores get more from meat-based meals, and omnivores will get an average amount of stamina from both meats and plants. The herbivore species you can play as include the rabbit and the deer. The rabbit will give your crops an extra 10% chance to have a bumper crop, which is an extra crop that grows alongside it, and the deer will give you a plus 50% chance to harvest 1 extra hay grass when you're harvesting hay. The playable carnivores include the fox, the stoat or mustelid, and the feline. The fox will give you an extra 30% chance for your bluggies to lay an extra egg. The stoat will give you an extra 2% chance to get meat when you're shaking or chopping down a tree. And the feline will give you an extra 20% chance to get an extra milk when you're harvesting from your alfeeb. Options for playable omnivores include the bear, raccoon, rodent, and pig. If you play the bear, you'll have a chance to get an extra fruit from foraging fruit bushes. If you play the raccoon, you'll get 30% more stamina from any food that you eat after 8 p.m. The rodent will give you a 20% chance to get an extra nut when you're harvesting nut trees. And the pig will give you a 20% chance to get an extra mushroom when you're shearing your girdles. When you're choosing the animal species you want to play as, try not to worry too much about the skills you're going to get from the different animal types here, and just make sure that you're choosing the species you feel happiest with, because while you're able to use a grooming service to change your appearance later in the game, it doesn't allow you to change your species, so be sure you choose the right one from the beginning. Once you've chosen your species, you can name your character, and edit your pronouns, eye color, fur pattern, tail style, fur color, and adjust your hat or ear style, shirt, and pants. You can choose colors either from the pre-made palette options or from a range of hues using the available color adjustment slider bars. Something to know too is that your pronoun selection won't affect any of the romance options available to you once the game does introduce romance as a feature. All the characters that are possible to romance will be romanceable regardless of what gender your character identifies as. While you're editing your character, something to also pay close attention to is your profession. Your profession is essentially a free tier 2 skill that you get to start the game with, so it's wise to choose a decent one for your character to make the most of that. Speaking of the skills, there is an entire skill tree you can choose from in Grimshire to help you along your adventure. There are 3 tiers for skills, with Tier 1 skills costing 1 skill point to unlock, Tier 2 costing 2 skill points, and Tier 3 costing 3 skill points. You can unlock skills from any tier at any time as long as you have enough skill points to purchase them. So if you want to, you can buy a tier 3 skill as soon as you've saved up 3 skill points to unlock one. So there is a lot of freedom and flexibility in how you choose to progress through this game's skill tree. However, you do start off only earning 1 skill point at a time when you first level up, so it will take some time if you would like to do this. Also important to know right now is that in early access, the level cap in the game is level 30, so you won't be able to unlock every single skill even if you want to. So you'll want to choose wisely when selecting which skills you want to prioritize. Right after you get out of character creation, you'll be able to choose the difficulty level you'd like to play the game on, and you'll be presented with a warning that the game will be darker and more challenging than you might expect. There's not too much pressure here though, since you can change the difficulty higher or lower at any time through your options menu. The difficulties in the game are Gentle, Unsteady, Grim, and Challenge. If you're looking for a more cozy game or story-based experience, you'll probably want to play on Gentle difficulty. If you like a bit of a challenge but still want to learn the game fairly organically, Unsteady would be a good pick. And once you're on your second playthrough and feel more comfortable with how the game works, or if you just absolutely love a hardcore challenge and dramatic repercussions to your actions, then the Grim or Challenge difficulties might be a good match for you. Once you've chosen your difficulty and loaded into the game, you'll be presented with a mysterious opening cutscene where you're saved from the capital city by a traveling merchant and taken aboard a ship to Grimshire, a small village isolated by water and mountains. While you may have escaped without injury and with only some minor memory loss, your companion, who is also from the capital, wasn't as lucky. With confusion about what happened at the capital worrying the townsfolk, the person who saves you sets back off to find out more information about what's going on in the rest of the world, while you end up settling down into the town of Grimshire in the meantime. The friendly townsfolk provide you with an old farmhouse on the edge of town to stay in and use as you please while they find out more. After you're granted your farmland, the game continues on in a pretty normal way, beginning with a meet and greet with the residents quest like many others in this genre. Early on, the game does feel much like your typical farming sim. The residents are reasonably friendly and give you useful tools for introducing yourself to them, which allows you to begin fixing up your farmland as you'd like. However, over time, Grimshire starts to show more of its unique charm. Right away, we see the depth and sadness of Grimshire, showing us that this game isn't afraid to be dark, and the story around the strange events surrounding what happened to the capital begin to deepen. Responsibility on both your shoulders and the shoulders of the other townspeople steepens further, and in these difficult and confusing times, you start to feel immersed, as if Grimshire is truly a real community. A community that you care about saving and protecting no matter what comes your way. The story in this game creates a cozy atmosphere with high stakes and a slowly increasing and looming feeling of concern and dread. At times, you can immerse yourself into farming, fishing, foraging, mining, and cozy repetition, and then other times you feel the heavy weight of unexpected obstacles or the repercussions of mistakes you've accidentally made while playing. Something that adds to the charm of Grimshire's uniquely moodly narrative is the personalities and stories of the residents. While the townspeople of Grimshire are friendly and welcoming to you, they're also relatably human. They're worried, panicked, and angry even at times when faced with the difficulties of the story. They empathize alongside you when times are difficult and lend their hands toward town goals that need fulfilled, like donating food to the town stockpile and materials to town projects, making Grimshire feel like a real community, where you're all just working together to get through the hard times side by side. The townsfolk have their own schedules and will move around the world map throughout the game days, similar to how NPCs wander around in games like Stardew Valley. In Grimshire, most of the characters are non-romanceable NPCs that you can build friendships with. When the game is fully complete, there will be 10 hearts available for the villagers. You can give gifts to villagers, and every villager has unique likes and dislikes for the types of gifts they can receive. You also earn extra relationship points for giving them gifts they like on their birthdays too, which are listed in the in-game calendar. Additionally, there are 10 romanceable NPCs as well, though you can't romance them yet in early access. But they are in the game and marked with a blue flower icon next to their profile under the Villagers tab in your menus. There are 5 male and 5 female options to choose from. The male romanceables include Kai, a lynx, who's a shy and reserved hunter who lives on the edge of town, Logan, a wolf, who's the playful town rancher, Oliver, a weasel, who's a reclusive assistant at the general store, Percy, a lemming, who's the hardworking and friendly mayor's assistant, Tano, another lynx, who's the younger brother to Kai and a friendly trapper and weaver. And then the female options are Adeline, a fox and a researcher who basically runs the museum in town, Beryl, who helps Adeline with her research in the valley, Hazel, the town healer who treats you when you first arrive, Lila, a goat who's a bar maiden who helps her father run the town tavern, and Rose, a rabbit, who's assistant to Hazel, the town healer. Romanceable characters have several levels of friendship, and as I mentioned before, regardless of what gender you select for your character during character customization, you will be able to romance any of the romanceable townsfolk. It also doesn't matter what species you are. So even if you're playing as a rabbit or a rodent, you can still romance, marry, and have children with a fox, lynx, and so on. Of course, these features aren't currently in the game yet, but the developers have stated that they will be added. The developers have also said that in terms of interspecies children, the children will be chosen randomly from one of the two parent species. Once romance is added to the game, any romanceable characters who you are not dating will form couples over the course of the game's story, but the devs haven't revealed who might naturally end up dating who yet. As of right now, there's no combat in the game that I'm aware of, at least not in the traditional sense. The struggles in Grimshire come less from physical fighting, so you won't find enemies inside the game's mines, for instance, and more from battling against the survival elements that the game puts against you. A lot of these survival elements take the form of quests in the game, which you'll want to focus on completing to avoid negative repercussions. As mentioned, Grimshire does have mines that you can visit, with ores and treasures hidden within and ladders leading down to subsequent floors. However, once you unlock a new floor, you can teleport directly to that floor at any time for future visits. You mine ore from the walls of the mine, and you can collapse the walls accidentally or purposefully when doing this. You can also break through walls to find new areas that might have your next floor ladder leading downward. There are 3 mines in total in this game, which you can unlock around the map based on what tier pickaxe you have. Each have different helpful materials, so you'll find upgrading your tools very useful. There is also fishing in the game, and fishing uses very little of your stamina to do, as opposed to things like mining and woodcutting, which consume quite a bit. When you want to fish, you'll need to stand near a body of water where you see the shadow of a fish swimming around, cast your line as close to the fish as possible by charging up your cast, and then click when the fish pulls the bobber under the water. After that, you just keep holding the same button you clicked to reel in the fish, and you don't have to do any special mini-games or anything. However, some fish are more difficult to catch just by clicking as soon as you see the bobber go under, even if you have fast reflexes. To help with this, you can upgrade your rod to increase your success rates. If you're wondering if you have to fish in the game or if fishing is optional, I would say that fishing is very useful, but if you don't enjoy it, there is a lot of strategy in Grimshire, allowing you to get food in different creative ways. So, although I haven't personally done a run without doing fishing at all yet, it probably is possible to cleverly plan around fishing by just using fish traps, buying omnivore food items from the shops in town, and raising farm animals early on. Speaking of farm animals, there are several different kinds of critters in the game which can be found around the world, tamed, and added to your farm once you've built an animal house for them. I believe there are 4 different types of farm animal critters in the game currently. The Bluggy, Chikree, Alfeep, and Girdle, which can provide you with animal products like wool, milk, eggs, and meat, and can breed as well. Right now, there aren't a lot of festivals in the game, but I do think there is at least one per season, and I believe the devs have mentioned that they might add more. There's a variety of crafting stations and recipes in the game that you can unlock or get from quests and use too. Some examples are the crafting table, cooking station, compost bin, drying rack, juice press, fermentation barrel, smelter, etc. So there's a lot of crafting to be done if you are a fan of that. There's also plenty of foraging you can do around the map, and the items that you can forage are dependent on the seasons in the game, which are spring, summer, fall, and winter. The game starts on the first day of spring, and each season is 28 days long. Seasons also affect fish types, growable crops, and the routines of Grimshire's villagers. There's weather like sunny, windy, rainy, and stormy, which affect your crops being watered or not, whether or not your farm animals will choose to venture outside of their barns, and if your drying rack stations will function at all. Every day, there is a typical day and night cycle, and when it gets to around midnight, your clock will begin flashing red and your character will soon fall asleep, leading to a stamina loss and a later wake up at around 10 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. the following day. As far as I'm aware, you won't lose any items if you fall asleep due to time, but you will lose about a quarter of your overall stamina. Before we talk about pricing and playtime, I do want to quickly also discuss what the developers behind the game, Acute Owl Studio, have been like to the community. The studio consists of only 2 people and their dog, who seem to be making the game entirely by themselves. These developers are clearly passionate, as they are very active with their community on platforms like Discord, and stay consistent with updates and communications on Steam. Something also notable is that the developers have taken the time to do polls directly to the Discord community that impact the direction of the game's development. For instance, in 2024, the devs mentioned that the player character wouldn't be available in every NPC species due to the time it would take them to make clothing items fit so many different base body types. So they asked the community which animal species they would like included the most. Little things like them taking the time to do this really show that they take an interest in making the game the most enjoyable it can be for the community. It's also worth mentioning that this is the second game this studio has released, with the first being Bones Cafe, a cooking sim. And although Bones Cafe got very positive reviews on Steam, it does appear that the art and game quality from the studio has been consistently improving over time. The art in Grimshire actually reminds me a lot of early Stardew Valley and Traveler's Rest, where the game started out with more amateurish pixel art and then got lovingly revamped to what they are today. So where's the game at now in early access, and where will it be in the future as it nears its 1.0 release? Currently, you can play through the first year of content in the game, at which point Grimshire will technically end until it gets future updates. In its future updates, the developers plan to add a second year of storyline content as well as expand the world with deeper friendship building, romance, marriage and children, rival relationships, more language localizations, and so on. At the time of this video, there isn't a specific release date for the 1.0 update, but the game is estimated to be in early access for at least 1 to 2 years according to Grimshire's Steam page. As far as content updates go, the developers are actively releasing patches for the game with new additions. Since the game entered early access on Steam, it seems to get a new update or patch about every month or two with various improvements or content. As far as pricing goes, Grimshire is available in early access on Steam for $14.99 at full price and often goes on sale for 20% off, dropping it down to $11.99. The closest comparison for a similar game is probably Graveyard Keeper, which is $19.99 at full price, but sometimes goes on major sales which drop it down to as low as $3.99. Apart from that, Grimshire is priced pretty squarely within the $10 to $20 range of most popular indie cozy pixel art farming sim games. But is it worth that price in terms of the playtime you might get out of it? Well, right now, one full playthrough of the game in its current early access state takes about 40 to 50 real-life hours, and it lasts from the beginning of the first spring to the end of the first winter in-game. As of right now, you can't continue past the last day of winter. The day will just keep on resetting. But winter does have a specific event that makes it feel like a resolute ending for now while the game is still in its early access form. A lot of players do decide once they reach the ending to restart the game from the first spring and retry it on a harder difficulty or see what happens if they were to make different choices. But with that said, most casual players typically do get about 40 to 50 hours for their one playthrough, and the more dedicated players can end up getting over 100 hours if they're doing multiple playthroughs on the harder difficulties. In future updates, as I mentioned, the game is planned to have an entire second year of content, which will likely double the overall playtime. So who is this game not for? If you're sensitive to dark themes like starvation and the passing away of townsfolk, Grimshire probably isn't a good fit for you. The game deals with some very heavy themes and does have a weighty feel to it, similar to the emotional weight of Spiritfarer. If you'd like a happier feeling game with familiar cozy farming elements, I'd recommend something like Fields of Mistria instead. It's probably also not a good choice if you don't enjoy stressful or challenging gameplay. There is a difficulty setting option, as I mentioned, before you start the game, and you can choose to play on the gentle difficulty, which is the lowest option, but even if you do, there is still this level of tension you feel while playing, so it's still heart-pounding when something major happens and you're not sure how you might get through, And even the easiest difficulty can be quite challenging on your first playthrough when you're still learning the ropes of how the game works, or if you're not really familiar with this type of farming sim game. So for some players, having tension and challenge like this is off-putting and just doesn't feel cozy. So just be aware that if you would prefer a more easygoing game, this probably isn't a good fit for you. This game is also not for players who just don't enjoy the art style. I almost didn't pick this game up personally because of the art style, and although I grew to appreciate it while playing, there are some players who will just not like playing a game with this particular aesthetic. The art itself is a bit dark and desaturated, which is a style and color palette that actually really works once you're playing for a while, but it is quite different from the polished and colorful worlds of games like Stardew Valley. It could also be bothersome to some players that all of the characters are animals rather than humans, who talk in voices that sound kind of like Animal Crossing dialogue, and that those characters are romanceable, even though you definitely don't need to romance anyone to complete the story. But if these are things that you wouldn't like, do keep them in mind. If clunky controls are a bother, you might also find this game quite annoying. The default controls, if you don't change them through key mapping, are pretty unintuitive and can leave you feeling confused or frustrated. Of course, you can key map them how you'd like, but there are still some minor clunky elements in the game in general. Since this is an indie title made by small developers, these sorts of little quirks are fairly normal, but if you're used to playing more carefully polished AA or AAA games, the indie state of this game may really bother you. The developers do apologize for some of these issues on the main menu screen of the game though, mentioning that some quality of life things are still being worked on, so we may see improvements to this in the future. If you really dislike stamina mechanics in your farming games, Grimshire does revolve a lot around managing your stamina to get the most done in your days, so that could be something you might choose to pass on as well. And this is a game where your livestock can pass away due to age, and where you may choose to cull them for their animal products. If that's something you feel uncomfortable with too, that's a good thing to be aware of. And finally, the game ending at the end of winter in its current early access state might be a big deal breaker for some players. If you're used to other farming sims that allow you to have kind of a limitless type of gameplay where you could play for hundreds of hours without looping or restarting, the game isn't in that state right now. I'm not sure what Grimshire will look like after the developers add Year 2 and fully launch the game, but I'm not sure if it is intended to be an endlessly replayable game. So if you would be bothered by that, definitely wait until it gets its full release to see if it's a good fit or not for you. But if you stuck around and those drawbacks don't sound like deal breakers to you, what types of players might really enjoy this game? If you love management games where you need to take care of a colony, or you're just looking for a twist on the usual cozy farming game genre, this is like a farming sim mixed with some colony management and unsettling sort of graveyard keeper vibes. It's a very interesting mix, and it's difficult to really find games that compare well to it that are currently released. Also, if you enjoy a bit of challenge in your games and have felt like normal farming sims are a little too easy or too boring for you, this game might offer a nice change of pace. Grimshire can be as easy or as difficult as you want, since you can choose your difficulty from the get-go, and the hardest difficulties can give you all the planning and spreadsheeting and hardcore vibes that you might want. But like I said, you can always choose to play on a middle difficulty or the easiest gentle setting if you mainly want to enjoy the story and grim cozy gameplay and don't want to be challenged so harshly. So what's my overall verdict and opinion on this game? Is it worth buying? To me, absolutely. I didn't really have any sort of expectations going into playing this, besides just being ready to play another farming sim style game. But I think I'll be spending a lot more time replaying this, digging even deeper into it, and probably making some guides around it to help other players who ended up loving it as much as I do. The gameplay in Grimshire is so cozy and familiar, but yet every choice feels deep and impactful in a way that seems more meaningful than a lot of the farming games available today. The dark spin on the storyline gives an almost eerie light horror vibe, but it isn't grotesque or leaning on jump scares or shock value to be unsettling. It just keeps you on edge and intrigued about what might come next. And there's a level of real challenge in this game where new events add difficulty and curveballs to your plans, keeping you on your toes and making you wonder how in the world you're going to manage to save your townsfolk this time. It's been a long time since a game has been this hard for me to put down. A lot of times I enjoy a game, sure, but it doesn't linger on my mind after playing. But Grimshire really hooked me. I stayed up way later than I expected to on the first day I got the game. Before I went to bed, I was ruminating about the story and the choices I had made. And then the next morning, it was the first thing I thought about, and I was eager to just get back to playing it more. I can't explain how rare and incredible that feeling is to have with a game, but I'm impressed and thankful that this small indie gem was able to spark that level of excitement in me. I also got the game during one of Grimshire's sales, and it felt like it was a really good value for the money. I'd personally probably still buy it at full price, but I felt like even in early access, the playtime for the money value was super reasonable. So to me, Grimshire was a really lovely and addictive surprise. I love that there's this looming darkness and weighty management aspect that makes the actions you take feel more consequential than they do in many other cozy farming sims. Progression in the game feels good, and gradually the story gets more intense, so you start feeling genuine dread for the situation you and your townsfolk are in. I also don't usually get so attached to a community of NPCs. It's also important to me that the developers seem to care a lot about the game, and have put heart into making it stand apart from other games in the genre, in a really fun and unique way. With indie games like this, I'm not too picky about art style or clunky controls if the game itself is fun. And in my opinion, that is the case with Grimshire. Anyway, I hope this review was helpful for deciding whether or not Grimshire would be a fun game for you. I tried to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, so I hope it helped and didn't reveal too much of the mysteries of the game's story for you. And of course, if you're not sure about the game and you'd like to give it a try to see for yourself if it's a good fit, it actually does have a free demo you can play on Steam, so definitely try it if you're interested. I believe the demo covers about 7 days of in-game time, so it ends up giving you around 2 hours of real-life playtime, so it should give you an ample taste of the game to see if it's a good fit for you. If you enjoyed the review, I have several more for other games on my channel, and if you do decide to play Grimshire and want some beginner's tips, like I mentioned, I'll be making some guides to get started out in the game soon. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed it. Thanks again, and hope to see you next time.